she had started working a company. Her direct line manager started direct messaging her several times every day with, "Oh, you're so beautiful. I want to marry you. I want to do this. I want to do that." And she said, "No, I'm already married. You know, this is not something. I'm not here for that." And she told me a story that, to her, she felt empowered, but to me sounded horrific. So she put up with this behavior for 7 years.
7 years.
7 years. And she said, "Oh, when we became friends, because I knew that he was hurting and he didn't mean this." And I said, "Well, okay, but you didn't complain to HR." And she said, "I didn't complain specifically because I thought I might lose my job." So,
Yes.
from her perspective, she had rationalized abuse in terms of, "Oh, this is something I should expect." What is going on, or what, let's say what is going on, because laws don't mean that society changes. So, what was and is going on in terms of behavior?
So I would say like the act before it came into being, the cases were very, very rampant. And like you said, women generally don't speak up because there's so much of stigma associated with it. If you're being sexually harassed, and typically in India, it would happen that you immediately judge the woman. So
Mm.
you say who asked you to wear certain kind of clothes, who asked
Yeah.
you to get friendly with men, who asked you to take up a job. So there are so many kind of character assassinations that happen the moment you say that this has happened to me. Then another thing that prevents women from filing these complaints is loss of job security. So they feel if they file a complaint, so probably they might lose their job, or it might happen that they wouldn't, be considered for promotions in the organization, or people would just consider her a problematic person.
Mm.
So I personally know someone who was, who filed a complaint because her boss was sexually harassing her, and then she was counseled into saying things like, "You should not be behaving like this. You are such a good performer. You have a high career here, and if you file such complaints," so it was a very subtle way of telling her that you better silence yourself, because if you speak up, then we consider you a troublemaker in the organization. So
Mm.
that's the reason that even today, when the law has been passed, at least 60 to 65% of the complaints are never reported because women face so much of stigma from the society, from their family, as well as at the workplace.
It's shocking, actually, because in this country, only about 10% of rapes get even reported, and of those, only 5% make it to trial, and even less, there's a conviction. And so, even in, we might like to think, and certainly Britain and America, when they have their news, they make out like other countries are the problem, like, "Oh, well, this wouldn't happen in our country," but actually it is completely ubiquitous. It's happening everywhere, just under the
Correct.
guise of different things. So in America now, I don't know if you are over this, but they there are 40 out of 50 states that now have such strict birth control measures that a woman, and this is not my view on whether or not you should or should not have an abortion, but I do believe that a woman should have the choice. And that's being
Correct.
denied in America, which claims to be a world leader in freedom. So 65, 70% of women are not even reporting, even with the law. Having spoken, so we were going to be joined by Anna Sua, who could make it today, but she has a product where it's an online portal for small business owners, the women basically, to make extra revenue to become financially independent. And she told me that frequently husbands and families won't even want the woman to work. So,
Correct.
so if only a small subset of women are even um, able, let's say, to go to work, so they must be quite strong already. Yet they
Correct. Correct.
yet they don't feel they can report this. What are the sanctions involved if someone does do this? A man
So
does
if
this.
a woman does report, I think the act is very much in the favor of women. She
Okay.
just has to prove the probability that something like this happened. And in most of the cases, if the organization find out that there was a probability that this person has been harassing a woman, we have an inquiry under POSH, which is known as an internal complaints committee inquiry. So once the inquiry comes out and it is found out that the person is guilty, he is generally terminated from the organization, and that happens with immediate effect. So the law is strict, and the way I see it, a lot of companies have terminated people even at very senior levels because they don't want that the goodwill of the organization should be affected, and they also want to set the tone for the organization that we do not accept any kind of sexual harassment or any form of harassment in the organization. So what the act also helps is, you have to legally put down these notices on your in your canteen, at your reception area, and there you have to mention that we do not tolerate any kind of harassment towards employees. If you have a query, this is a place you can get in touch with. So that is how the act is, and it has helped a lot of women. I have seen even women, who are not literate, who are working in the on the shop floor, they have filed cases saying, this person has been harassing me, you take an action.
Oh,
And with the
really?
help of, yes, and I believe a lot of women who are not literate are what I would say, it is surprisingly, they are very, very courageous. They would come up and say a lot of things which I've seen a lot of educated women hesitate to do. So I've seen, the kinds of doctors, engineers, and scientists putting up with harassment, and someone who's not literate, women gathering together and saying, this is something we don't accept. This person has to be out of the
Yeah,
organization.
yeah. So then we're talking about fairly large organizations. What's the sort of staffing size that really would be bothered about this? Because I can't imagine that a man who employs 5 women to make things, I can't imagine in that sort of scenario that this law would help them, or would it?
So the way the act has been framed is, it is applicable on everyone.
Okay.
The only thing is, you need to form an internal complaints committee that is within your organization only if you have 10 or more employees, and that does not include women. So it can be anyone. It can be all male members organization. You still have to form an ICC committee so that if a case comes up, you have to take it up. So if you have less number of employees, then what you do is, there is something known as a local complaints committee, which the government has formed. So then
Okay.
any woman can go there and file the case.
And if I'm a woman, and obviously, so you are a trained person in this and very experienced in this area, so obviously you speak English. Is there, in your native language, if you want to
Yes.
look into the camera and talk to the women that might watch this video in your own language and tell them how to reach out to you, that I think would be helpful.
So sure.